A single business in Nigeria has to cope with over 69 taxes, levies, and fees within its compliance environment. I think that is too much. It's too much for you to be battling with over 80 or 60 or 50. I mean, you can imagine in 2015, there was a petition to say, look, the taxes and levies approved list for collection already contains about 39 taxes, levies, and fees. Can this be reduced? That was MAN's position, Manufacturer Association of Nigeria. They came up with a petition to say, look, can you even reduce this to be about 15 or 18 or whatever the number, just reduce. At the end of the day, by the time the amendment came out for the taxes and levies and approved list of collection, that number grew from 39 to 55.
People continue to mention that we have a long list of taxes at the 3 tiers of government: federal, states, and local government. But as a matter of fact, the list, if you review carefully and technically speaking, you will not get more than 8. Mostly what you find are fees and fines in some cases and levies. So at JTB, we have been making effort, and states have been advised to harmonize and streamline their taxes. For example, the ground rents, tenement rates, and all other land-related charges have been put under one tax item to be administered jointly by the states and local government. And then the proceeds from the proceed therein is being shared in agreed formula by the 2 tiers of government.
I want us to engage more deeply on whether, in fact, we have as much as 100 taxes, 67 taxes, 80 taxes in Nigeria. I don't think so. So long as we continue to lump taxes with fees, charges, we will continue to have problems. I mean, when we see all those long lists, we need to probe them. Most of what you have in your Cap T 21, they are basically fees. If you receive services from agencies that have certain benefits, then you have to pay for them. The issue is how much? How much?
Fireworks from a public-private dialogue session which took place recently and which we are going to share with you on today's episode of Tax Matters. There's a new acronym trending these days, PPD, Public-Private Dialogue, whereby every organization desirous of carrying its public along organizes dialogue sessions with them. The Federal Inland Revenue Service is no different. From time to time, the FRS organizes PPD sessions. And when public-private dialogue sessions are organized by other stakeholders and tax is on the table, the FRS is there. On the 22nd of November 2016, the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, NASME, collaborated with an accounting firm, Deloitte, and a body known as Enable to organize a public-private dialogue on tax regulatory policy framework for micro, small and medium enterprises in Nigeria. The executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Babatunde Fowler, was there in person. So also was the executive chairman of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, Mr. Ayodele Suber. Are you surprised? It was serious business. How did it go? That you will get to hear and see on today's episode of Tax Matters. Plus, the FRS sets up shops at 2 international trade fairs. And of course more. The Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria has admitted 584 new associate members into its ranks, while elevating 328 associate members to the rank of fellows. The program is Tax Matters, and my name is Olumuyiwa Matuluko.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service FIRS calls on all corporate organizations operating in Nigeria to register for the purpose of payment of taxes and obtain a tax identification number TIN. All registered companies must obtain a tax identification number immediately from the nearest FIRS office. You can also collect and return tax registration forms from the Federal Inland Revenue Service Engagement and Enlightenment Tax Teams, FEET, on compliance checks exercise in your area. A company which is yet to commence business after at least 6 months of incorporation must pay a pre-operational levy of 20,000 naira in the first year and 25,000 naira for subsequent years to obtain its tax clearance certificate TCC. Note that filing and payment of VAT and withholding tax returns must be done on or before the 21st day of every month. Register for VAT. File all tax returns as and at when due. Be a responsible corporate citizen of Nigeria. It pays to pay your tax. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
On Tuesday, the 22nd of November 2016, the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Babatunde Fowler, and the Executive Chairman, Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, accompanied by their top directors, met with the coalition of micro, small and medium enterprises stakeholders at a public-private dialogue on tax regulatory policy framework. The event took place in Lagos. Prince Degun Agboade is the president, NASME.
The current stagnation facing MSMEs resulting from multiple taxation, levies, fees, permits, and so on, should not be overlooked. This public-private dialogue is expected to provide a platform for industries and enterprise to exchange ideas and profile solutions to support government in the development of best fit tax regime that meets government objective to generate revenue while enabling economic growth via SME successes.
The NASME MSME coalition is uniquely designed to focus on the Nigerian tax and regulatory framework as it affects MSMEs operation in the country, as most SMEs are defaulting in their obligation to file tax returns with the Federal Inland Revenue, State Internal Revenue Service, and annual return with the Corporate Affairs Commission. Some of them are not even aware that they have to file, returns with the CAC and also with the tax agencies, to the extent that today you find a lot of MSMEs owing the revenue agencies a lot of money. And that is why we needed to come out with this initiative to be able to alleviate some of the issues, because if they have to pay the penalties that they have saddled themselves with, most of them will go bankrupt. And I think that the wise thing that government can do is to forgo and forgive. And that's why we call for amnesty. The second point is that we are requesting for tax holidays for startups. Anybody who is starting a business should be able to get a concession from government for 3 to 5 years to enable them stabilize before commencement of taxation, thereby reducing the high rate of failure among MSMEs. Then the third point is downward review of the company income tax from 30% to 2.5% for micro and 5% for small businesses.
The Honorable Federal Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, was represented at the dialogue by the Director of Technical Services in the Ministry, Mrs. Lara Shuaib, while the Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment was represented by Mrs. Oshikalu.
So we don't want to do anything that would kill our small businesses. If anything at all, we'll do whatever it takes to improve the working environment for them.
Responding quickly to some of the issues raised in the overview, Executive Chairman FIRS, Mr. Fowler, had this to say.
The Nigerian government does have the small-scale businesses as a #1 priority, because we believe that for any economy to work, you have to work. In terms of the waivers, the taxing authorities in Nigeria are distinct. We do have the prerogative to make policy on the federal taxes, but the state internal revenue service boards are totally autonomous, and they also have to, they'll make separate policies. What we have found out is that there are a lot of, I'll call illegal charges. Some individuals who call themselves revenue officials, either at the local government level or they just appear, come up with charges. we're working on reducing the tax rate. And I believe that before the end of the year, you'll be advised on the new tax rate, which should be effective in 2017.
Signaling the commencement of the dialogue, Mr. Sheyi Arowolo of Deloitte delivered the executive summary and fact sheet of the sector-wide position paper.
Now, the tax policy that was revised talked about, in fact, the overriding philosophy of that revised policy is encouraging voluntary tax compliance culture in Nigeria. And the question is, despite the fact that Nigerians realize that a government is financed through taxation, in fact, taxation is the lifeblood of government, and cash is king. Without cash, you can't do anything. Many would rather not pay their taxes voluntarily. And we are saying that could it be the kind of stimulus, could it be the kind of signal that the government itself or its agencies are sending out that are not encouraging compliance? We are talking of micro, small, medium enterprises. So the rates have to match the performance of that business. Not that somebody will just sit down somewhere and impose 30%, regardless of consideration for whether status you are having. And that is what, and we also said minimum tax. How can an MSME be subject to minimum tax, which is also a kind of tax avoidance provision, to say, look, even when you are loss-making, you should still pay something. And we know how the graduated table of calculation of minimum tax is. We are also talking of commencement rule, which in the course of a 3 or 4 year period, you are going to be subject to double taxation. So as an MSME, if you are going to be subject to double tax on the same kind of revenue twice in a 4-year period, what is left? So we are saying that part of the things that we will want in a dedicated MSME-friendly tax regime is 100% loss relief against future profit.
And then the dialogue began. Time will only permit us to serve you snippets from the dialogue on this episode.
To the layman, when you say, oh, there's a difference between taxes, levies, and fines, I am taxed. They see LOMA, tax. LASA, tax. Income tax, tax.
And we had 2 or 3 delivery vans. I tell you, sir, we had 17 documents. And I had to sell it. Aside from the signage, I agree. If you put a signage, you have to pay. You're advertising. But there are loading and offloading. Basket. I mean, these are there.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my honor and privilege to stand before you on this very special day, a day that has been set aside in honor of one of those vehicles that ensure the economic growth of Nigeria, that vehicle that went round to at least collect tax that are due from companies and organizations within the federation of this country, Nigeria. That is in particular talking about the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
One of the vehicles that ensure the economic growth of Nigeria, that coming from a third party, from an unbiased party, is a good testimony and a befitting introduction to the subject at hand. The Federal Inland Revenue Service routinely participates at trade fairs. In the month of November 2016 alone, the FRS set up shops at 2 trade fairs, the Lagos International Trade Fair and the Kano International Trade Fair. The 2016 edition of the Lagos International Trade Fair took place from Friday the 4th of November to Sunday the 13th of November 2016. Throughout the 10 days of the fair, held at the Tafawa Balewa Square, officials of the service attended to scores of visitors, enlightening them, educating them, and registering them for taxpayer identification number. In Kano, the FRS Day at the fair was held on Wednesday, the 30th of November. The executive chairman, Mr. Babatunde Fowler, was represented at the occasion by Alhaji T.K. Hussaini, Director, Federal Enlightenment and Education Tax Team at the FRS.
On our part, we have made significant efforts to align with the federal government of Nigeria's shift from hands on revenue from oil to a focus on growing the non-oil sector to ensure a more stable sustainable source of funds to run the nation's economy.
Collection and remittance of value-added tax also came up for special mention in the address.
I have a special plea on payment and remittance of VAT. Please note that VAT is a consumption tax paid by consumers. Business owners are mere government agents for collection and therefore should remit on or before 21st of the following month. FRS plans to begin prosecution of defaulters in due course. Business owners are not the payers of VAT. It's a consumption tax. So once you charge and you collect, you are obliged to remit to Federal Inland Revenue Service before the 21st or before 21st of the following month.
Guests were entertained by various groups, all in a bid to drive home the gospel of voluntary tax compliance.
We urge each and everyone here present to align with us in these efforts, and indeed, no matter how you look at it, we have to salvage this country together. Salvaging it together economically, this is the machinery. And we are hoping that indeed, with time, in a very short time to come, we will be able to deliver the mandate given to us by the federal government through your efforts.
The representative of the executive chairman thereafter led guests on a tour of the FRS stand at the trade fair. Throughout the 17 days of the fair, officials of the Federal Inland Revenue Service received visitors at the stand, registering them for TIN, responding to inquiries, enlightening and educating taxpayers and prospective taxpayers alike.
VAT, Value Added Tax, is a tax paid on all goods and services and remitted by the seller of the goods or provider of the service to government. 5% VAT is added to the total cost of goods and services in Nigeria, and when remitted to government, is used for funding development. The VAT you pay will be used by government to develop our transport infrastructure, like roads and railway lines, to continually improve our educational sector by building more schools and upgrading existing ones, to provide adequate security and a better quality of life for us all. Pay your VAT. Make your contributions to the development of Nigeria. It pays to pay your tax. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Mr. President, you have before you 584 prospective members of the Institute. 70 of them wrote the professional exams of the Institute and passed, while 514 have been attending the pre-induction orientation program from Monday, 21st November through Wednesday, 23rd November 2016. They are all qualified to be admitted as members. In accordance with the Institute's charter, I hereby recommend them to you for admission as members of our Grace Institute.
Date was Thursday, 24th November 2016. Location was the event center at the Central Business District, Alausa, Ikeja in Lagos. The event, the 35th induction ceremony of the CITN, at which 584 men and women were formally admitted into the esteemed ranks of registered tax practitioners. Among the 584 was the Deputy Governor of Sokoto State, Alhaji Ahmed Aliu Sokoto, who formally received his license to practice as a chartered tax practitioner. On hand to add color to the ceremony was a full complement of members of Council of the Institute, led by the Vice President, Mr. Cyril Ikeme Funaede, who held forth for the President, Dr. Shomoni, who was away in South Africa. The special guest of honor was Professor Grace Olutunla, who delivered the keynote address titled Tax Administration Towards Economic Recovery and Growth in Nigeria. In his welcome address, Chairman Membership and Professional Conduct Committee of the CITN, Chief Ayodele Otitoju, harped on the need for the inductees to conduct themselves in line with the ethics of the profession.
It is pertinent to emphasize at this juncture that this noble profession expects high level of professionalism, coupled with honesty and integrity from all of you. The CITN expects fresh ideas as new blood into the Nigeria taxation system.
Chief Cyril Ede, Vice President of the Institute, who stood in for the President, spoke in the same vein.
Council expects the highest service of professionalism and integrity in the discharge of your duties to your clients and to all other stakeholders in order to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of the tax profession.
A major highlight of the 35th induction ceremony was the award of prizes to outstanding graduates of the CITN April 2016 examination diet. Mr. Monday Obozekai won 3 prizes as Best Overall Student, as well as Best in Oil and Gas Taxation and Best in Tax Management, while Ms. Zainab Damilola Salisu emerged Best Female Student. And then the climax, the formal induction.
I do solemnly swear that I shall always comply with the provisions of the Institute Charter.
Here is wishing the new chassis tax practitioners the best in their endeavors wherever they find themselves. 2 days after, on Saturday, the 26th of November, the same venue played host to the Who is Who in Business and Economy in Nigeria at a night of glitz and glamour, the 2016 annual dinner, awards and fellowship conferment of the CITN. At the occasion, 328 erstwhile associate members were elevated to the higher pedestal of fellows of the CITN. The string of recognitions and awards for the night was flagged off by the presentation of awards to members of staff of the CITN Secretariat who have put in 15 and 10 years of meritorious service. Next was the presentation of awards to 2015 awardees. Delta State was presented with the Outstanding State Government Award, while the Deputy Governor of Sokoto State, Alhaji Ahmad Aliyu Sokoto, won the award in the individual member category. The Deputy Governor was represented by Malam Muhammadu Musa Mashido of the Sokoto State Board of Internal Revenue, who himself was that night inducted as a fellow of the institute. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele of PwC won the Outstanding Service to Taxation Profession Award, while Sir Kesintin Adebutu won individual category non-member award. The Society for Women in Taxation Suite, as well as district societies of the institute, were also recognized for their contributions to the 2016 annual tax conference, which was held in Abuja. And then the high point of the night, the conferment of fellowship on 328 erstwhile associate members of the institute. Mr. Peter Henna, Coordinating Director, Support Services Group at the FRS, was one of the distinguished men and women.
On behalf of Council, I welcome our distinguished inductees who are deservedly being conferred with the prestigious fellow status of a noble professional institute. It is worthy of note that this signals another phase in your professional calling, which of course demands a lot of your expertise and practical experiences to be made to bear. This conferment is a wake-up call which demands an even greater level of professionalism and the highest level of responsibility towards upholding the ideals, values, and integrity of the noble profession.
What does it take to become a fellow of the CITN?
Before a member can become a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, first of all, the person must have been an associate member for not less than 5 years. And in these 5 years, he or she must have been attending all the various programs of the institute, and the person must have been claiming not less than 35 credit hours per year, and he or she must have been attending the programs of a district society, meaning that every member is expected to belong to a district society.
What roles do you expect of these fellows going forward?
You know, the position of fellow is a senior position, higher than that of associate. And you cannot become a fellow until you have spent 5 years as an associate. A fellow has to be honest. He must be accountable and transparent for his actions. He should be able to uphold the tenets of what the CI10 stands for, which is education, tax education, research, and tax administration and practice. We expect the fellows to be versatile in taxation, not only Nigerian taxation, also taxation in other countries. What is happening, the global taxation practice all over the world.
So in what ways have you prepared them ready to play that role?
Oh, they are well prepared because we have what we call MPTP, Mandatory Professional Training Program. So the Mandatory Professional Training Program, as the name sounds, is a training course for our members, and it is mandatory. Once you're a member of the institute, it's compulsory. You must attend at least one of these programs in a year.
Congratulations to the new fellows. We thank you most sincerely for watching. Keep watching Tax Matters, keep paying your taxes, and as we prepare for the end of the year, drive carefully. See you around.